I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Dyllón Burnside, who plays Ricky on Pose, which just aired its final season. And Dyllón, with this show ending, and this show has meant so much to so many people. What's the biggest piece of feedback that you've heard that's kind of touched you the most when it comes to this show?
Wow, that's a great question. I think that the greatest compliment that I can ever receive from people is that they felt it. Um, and and by it, I guess that means the performance or the storytelling. Particularly in this series finale, I got a lot of messages from people saying that they felt it, that they felt every moment. And the way that I interpret that is that it's ringing true, that it's coming across as real and that people are relating to the characters and the story in a way that awakens an emotion in them that reminds them of an experience in their life um, that represents their identity or their lived experience um, in some way that's really tangible. And so I think that's the biggest compliment that I could ever receive, is that someone is feeling it and not just watching it and thinking about it.
Well, and the show has really given you a chance to, we've seen Ricky grow so significantly over the course of the series. Um, and we really started to really see that, in season two. When did you know that Ricky was that this character was going to kind of like change the course of your career?
I mean, I only hoped that being a series regular on a Ryan Murphy show would change the course of my career, but I I mean, I still don't really have an understanding of what that means. Even right now, I am truly just trying to show up every day and do the best work that I can do. Um, and I can look back. I hope that I can look back over time and say, and then be able to answer this question in a way and say, "Oh, this is where it changed." Right now, it feels like I'm just showing up and doing the work day to day and trying to be the best that I can be and be as present as I can be in the moment, um, so that I can be present for whatever the scene or the moment requires of me.
And in I want to really delve into some of those moments, but we can't even go into that without talking about the Ricky Pray Tell relationship, which I think for those of us that are fans of the show, it was like this surprise that we didn't even know we wanted until we got it.
Yeah.
What did you think when you first saw that relationship, in the script, and did you know it was going to go where it has taken you?
No, I had no idea. I was completely surprised and taken off guard by it. You know, I I don't know where it came from. Um, I remember when we were filming um, Candy's funeral in season two. I think that was episode 4 of season 2. I can't remember
True,
exactly.
correct.
Um, okay, my memory's better than I thought it was. Um, and Ryan Murphy was really hands on with that episode because it was such a sensitive episode, and he wanted to make sure that it was handled with care. Um, and that was right after Ricky and Damon sort of went through their breakup. And so I remember him coming up to me and asking me where he thought I would be sitting in the funeral. And he was like, "Do you think that you you would you would be sitting over here with the rest of the family?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't think I would be sitting so close to Damon." And he was like, "Okay, good. I don't think so either." And so he told me to sit by Pray Tell. It's like, okay, cool. And so I sat with Billy, and then later on in the season, we start getting this like Pray Tell, I think maybe it was episode 6, we start getting this Pray Tell Ricky storyline around Ricky's HIV status. And I was completely shocked by it, but I understood it. I understood it in the way that Ricky, he needed the kind of support that only Pray Tell could offer. And Pray Tell needed the kind of companionship of someone who understood what he was going through too. And so, you know, it although it caught us all off guard, I understood it in a way that said, oh, I know how to play that. I understand what's happening with these characters in this relationship, even though it may have been shocking.
Well, and I think it was such an important relationship, you know, not just because of the sex scenes, but mostly because it was this real relationship between two men of color on television in a way that we really hadn't seen before.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's so much we haven't seen before when it comes to Black queer identity and relationships between two Black men. The spectrum of what we see of Black men on television and in film is limited, unfortunately. And so I am supremely grateful to have been able to not only be in a relationship on television with another Black man and show love and partnership between two Black men, but to be playing in a relationship with two HIV positive characters, to have the first ever sex scene between two Black HIV positive men on primetime television, and to be one of 3 characters on television right now who are HIV positive, and they all are on my show, Ricky, Pray Tell, and Blanca, which is completely shocking to me. But to be able to be to portray a character with that lived experience and to show that there's life after an HIV diagnosis has been really important for me.
And you know, we saw the beginning of the relationship in season 2, but season 3 is where it really has its peaks and valleys, and those were some of the most kind of emotionally charged scenes, starting with, you know, when Ricky walks out after Pray Tell's intervention. What was the atmosphere like that day? Because that is such a raw emotional scene.
Yeah, you know, I was really nervous about how that scene would play on screen, because that was my first scene back after COVID. That filming that scene, that was the first scene I shot when we came back. And there were all of these COVID protocols, and, you know, the COVID protocols were even more strict because we had just come back. And so not only am I negotiating this really intense scene with Billy Porter, who's a powerhouse, but I'm also negotiating my own fear about being around people again and this close. And, you know, I'm having a new person, a health and safety manager, come over and like make me walk off set every 20 minutes. And it's like, how do I get back into this moment when you're telling me to walk off? And so the actor in me is frustrated because, you know, I'm dealing with like real life stuff that's frustrating. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna infuse this frustration into the scene because there's so many different things to balance and negotiate and juggle. But it also was a turning point for, not only was it a turning point for the relationship between Ricky and Pray Tell, but it was a turning point for Ricky because we finally get to see that Ricky he's no longer that boy that we first met in that stairwell with Damon. He's not just this playboy who wants to have fun. He is a young man who is in a committed relationship with another man who loves and wants to take care of him, and he has maturity and enough maturity to know that Pray Tell is living an unhealthy lifestyle. And while he loves him, he can't fall into this pattern that maybe he's seen in his life. You know, he alludes to the fact that his mother had done that before, and so maybe his father was like Pray Tell, and he didn't want to repeat that. That's what I tend to think. And so yeah, it was a really big work day for me on set in terms of like all the things that I was juggling emotionally for the character, but also Dyllón, the actor, figuring out being back to work for the first time since COVID.
Yeah, and that follows, and then you go to the finale where you have to be the one that basically carries the dramatic burden for all of us when we discover that Pray Tell has died. Um, did you have to shoot that multiple times? That had to be emotionally exhausting for you.
It was incredibly exhausting. I got frustrated a few times because there were a lot of technical things that had to be done for that shot, and they wanted to get this really specific overhead shot, and so we had to do that so many times. But the blessing in that scene, it was scripted a little bit differently than how we played it out, and Ryan was also on set that day. And Steven directed the episode. Steven is really great with these like emotional scenes, and really great at being in tune with us. And what Ryan's really good at is he's really good at just like, because he's also like the boss, he can just say, forget the script and do whatever you want. And so he came in when we were blocking the scene, and he was just like, do whatever you want, just like, I want it to be raw. He was like, people get these scenes wrong all the time. No one ever gets it right. He was like, I don't want you to be thinking about the script or whatever these things are that we put in on the page. He was like, just make sure that you get to the phone and do this and that, but say what you want, do what you want. And that was so liberating because that's actually what I wanted to do anyway. I was like, how do I, figure out how to just be in this moment while thinking about all of this stuff. And so I think what we were able to craft together made it very real, made it feel very real. And I'm grateful that I had Billy Porter as an incredible scene partner, who was really patient and let me do my thing, and that I had Steven and Ryan there to support me the whole way.
But speaking of Billy, I actually wanted to, and you please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when we see Ricky, with the new House of Evangelista at the end, am I reading too much into it, or did you kind of adopt a little bit of Billy Porter? It seemed like you were giving us a little Billy Porter realness in that moment.
I mean, I think it's impossible for Ricky to have been in a relationship with Pray Tell for so long. First as a friend, and then as a lover for many years, and then finally as a friend again before he dies. And to have been so deeply impacted by his death and not have that affect him in some way that feels tangible. And so I really wanted the audiences to understand that Ricky is deeply changed by the loss of Pray Tell. And although we don't have that scripted, I wanted you to feel it. And so that was conversations with the costume designer, Ana Lucia McGordy, who was fantastic. I love her. We had so much fun in our fittings. And she and I talked a lot about that. And I was like, I want to wear some of his jewelry. And so I actually wore some of the rings that Billy wore. And we also, like, throughout the course of the seasons, we started to sprinkle some Pray Tell wardrobe influences in Ricky's wardrobe over time too, because I think when people become partners and they live together, especially two guys, it's like you're sharing wardrobe and all of that stuff. And so that had been happening all along. But in terms of like the performance, I did want to give some of that. You know, we saw all of these emotional scenes from Ricky finding Pray Tell in the bed after he transitions, to Ricky in the hospital with Blanca, to then finding out that Pray Tell sacrificed himself for Ricky. I had all of these emotional scenes to play. It was like, I told Steven, I joked with Steven, I was like, y'all had me crying in every scene. I mean, I went to work every day feeling the weight of that. I went home every day like just depleted of everything. But we fast forward to 1998 and we don't really understand scripturally how Ricky has changed because of that death. And so I wanted some kind of tangible thing that could let the audience know how deeply the death of Pray Tell has impacted him. And so that came across in some of the mannerisms, it came across in the wardrobe, and even in the speech, I shifted it a little bit just to give you that sort of, not a mimic, but just like the air of Pray Tell. It made you feel that Pray Tell was still present in Ricky's life.
Well, I'm so happy to see the work that you've done in this series. It really is tremendous. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for more interviews with contenders throughout the season. Dyllón Burnside, a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. It's great talking to you.